Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video, and as you've seen the title, today we are comparing the CHAB versus the MADKO in terms of what is the best EDC titanium balisong trainer that money can buy you. Best value for money, right? Because obviously if you're going to go best, then you're going to run into some problems, because you could say like, the JK Orca trainer, right? Because that's like, 2 screws, good value, like it's a good balisong, right? It flips well, all that good stuff. But no, today we're comparing specifically out of the clone market, because I think they offer the best value for money and the best kind of $100 titanium offerings, really. I don't think anyone else does anything similar. So yeah, here we have the Balisong CHAB. Now I know I'm comparing trainers, however, I have tried out the trainer blade. However, this guy is for sale, so I'm kind of wrapping up my videos with this guy before I sell him off. I need to gather funds for a car. You'll be seeing my collection video soon, do not worry. And the collection video will not be incomplete at all. But yeah, the balance is more or less the same. It's very, very similar to the point where I don't really have to compare. I don't have to compare prices. Not prices, I don't have to like swap out the blade. Especially because the fantastic tune on this, I'm not going to take the time to do a solid of a tune if it's just going to be sold anyways on the trainer blade. So we have this guy here, and of course we have the MADKO as well. Now these guys are sitting on my radiators, they're actually quite warm. Probably not good for the oil inside them, but yeah, they're not particularly specially been treated for today's video. I think this one has probably slightly fresher oil than this one, but this one still sounds fantastic. So let's get straight into the comparison. So I guess first thing to think about is how much do they cost? Now, I will admit the MADKO is slightly more expensive than the CHAB. I think it's understandable why. I mean, dimensionally, they seem to be almost exactly the same. The MADKO seems to have slightly longer handles with a slightly shorter blade, with a total length being almost the same, like, within a few millimeters of each other. And so there is that. So in terms of dimensionally, I don't think there is any difference. In terms of blade steel and materials, obviously they're both using grade 5 handle titanium, and I believe this guy uses D2 blade steel on the live blades, and I think 440 stainless on the trainers, whereas the MADKO here uses, as you can see, 5CR15 MOV, right? Which I've heard mixed things. So about the blade steel on these guys, I've heard some people, they got cracking problems that they split. Some people have no issues, but apparently the blade on these guys, as with the real MADKOs and real MAKOs, the blade is one of the more fragile bits. But I mean, it's understandably so, especially with how thin the actual areas here are, considering there's a lot more weight at the end, which obviously means if you were to slam it like this on something, it'll probably snap here somewhere, because that's the weakest part of the knife. Whereas on the CHAB trainer, I have got the actual blade here somewhere, here. You can see there is much less of a failure point for this guy. So just imagine this guy like there, right? Now, in terms of aesthetics, so first of all, we should come to a conclusion. Material-wise, the one CHAB probably will take the cake here. However, the one CHAB does come with spare hardware, and typically you're going to get a good tune. I mean, look at this guy. I mean, this is pretty much factory with some minor tweaking, just to improve the tolerances. However, I have swapped out the factory hardware. I think the factory hardware is quite poor on the CHAB. However, for very inexpensive, you can swap this out. You can get M3 screws for the pivots and M2 screws for the Zen pins, and also your this guy works as a Zen pin as well. This pivot here, latch, that's it. The latch works as a pivot. I apologize, guys, for having a slow brain moment. Yeah, just being very slow. Yeah, so you can also use that as a spare Zen pin. And so yeah, M2 and M3 screws I would recommend as a almost must-do replacement on these guys. If not the Zen pin screws, at least the body screws. It makes such a big difference, especially because it upgrades them to T10, and then you have a T10 balisong versus T8. Now when it comes to the hardware on the arm chuck balisong, this is not as easily replaceable. However, you know, this is already fantastic stuff, right? Like this is, you get spare hardware, obviously you get pivots at the bottom, you get spare hardware as well in the bag, even spare bushings now. And I mean, this hardware, I mean, you can pretty much crank down on it if you've got a good enough bit. I've had no problems with it coming loose or anything over the period that I've owned this guy, and so I'm very much impressed with this. So hardware on the Arm Shark products is always phenomenal. Same thing with the tolerances. You're going to be getting better tolerances on this guy out the box. This guy's got, you know, a teensy bit of wiggle, probably just because it's not been oiled up recently. Whereas this guy also, I mean, after a tune, probably similar amount of wiggle, maybe slightly less, just due to the thinner washers. So, you know, there's less room to wiggle anyways. And so in that case, you just get a very, very nice feeling balisong here, really. When it comes to then the sound, I guess, you guys can be your own judges. Now, for me personally, I do think that the CHAB has a bit more of an addicting sound, but I think that the MADKO has a much more high quality sounding sound. They both ring nicely. They both pretty much stop when you stop flipping, with a bit more overring on this guy than this guy. And so, yeah, in terms of sound, honestly, I'd probably give it to, for my personal preference, I would give it to the MADKO, but I feel like more people will prefer the CHAB sound. Simply they like the more kind of like, I mean, it sounds a bit more industrial. I love the ice pick. The ice pick on this guy sounds much nicer than the ice pick on this guy, but I prefer the ring on this guy, and so for me that makes it up. Here you've obviously got press fit end pins as opposed to screw ones. So happens when you don't pay attention to what you're actually doing. I guess we should talk about that then. Another thing, finish on the handles. This guy, I would say, is better finished, but it's worse. So the finishing on this guy is impeccable. It's flawless, so smooth, no sharp edges, absolutely anywhere. You know, even on the insides, you know, you can try as much as you want. Absolutely not a single sharp edge. However, it's very smooth, it's very rounded, it's very soft. If your hands are slippery, this guy is going to be falling out your hands much more so than the stonewash version of this guy. Here you've got a few more you've got a few more, you know, harsher corners. In here, I mean, you can say it's less comfortable, but by no means sharp or anything. I think the corners here are a little bit, well, actually, no, these have been, you know, nicely done out. And this guy will obviously wear in a little bit nicer over time, because it'll just get softer and softer. But this also is very soft out of the box, right? Like, this is like a very soft feeling balisong. This is, honestly, it's years ahead of its time and hundreds of dollars above its price. And so this guy, I think, also wins the kind of feel test. In terms of grip, yeah, he's just a little bit grippier whilst being a similar level of comfort. I'd say this guy is a little more comfortable, but that comfort does come at the slight cost of grip. And I think that the fact that this is kind of just like a square with cut holes, whereas this has, you know, the chevrons, which are a bit deeper, makes that a little better. However, this guy's got better jimping. So the MADKO is a little bit better at the ladder tricks, right? And that is something to think about if your flipping style consists of a lot of ladders. However, by no means is this guy slippery. He says, as the balisong falls out of hands, but I've got moisturized hands at the moment, which is not great for titanium, but it is what it is at the end of the day. Now I guess the part you've all been waiting for, the flipping performance. How do they flip? And to be honest with you, it's more similar than I would have thought. And it's also it's not the conclusion I would have come to. It's not what I would have thought was the case. So with the weights in, this guy flips obviously, you know, quite sluggishly, very handle biased. But we're going to talk without the weights because that's what I prefer, and I think they're a little bit more comparable that way. This guy has got a very neutral, light handle bias feel. A little bit more pivot weight than I would have perhaps liked on this kind of balisong. However, it's nicely mobile. It's a very smooth flowing balisong. It carries its momentum well, and it's got, yeah, you know, a pretty neutral handle bias, neutral to handle bias feel, right? Light handle bias. Really does really well on chaplains, although the neutrality does make it obviously a little fly away. You know, rollovers are no problem, and I mean, it fans phenomenally. And honestly, I don't have much to say as a problem when it comes to this guy as a flipper. This guy here is a much more competitive balance. It is a comfortable handle bias. It's still quite neutral, but I'd say it leans a bit more on the handle bias than the no weights MADKO, whereas the with weights MADKO is more handle bias than this. And I guess the biggest difference is that this long channel here gives it kind of crack and balance symptoms, where it's a very evenly distributed balance, which I quite like. And I would argue the balance on this guy is actually better. I think the weight is a little better distributed, and so you get slightly more predictable flows. It'll chaplain harder, I guess. It still does rollovers perfectly well. And the fanning is not as good as on the MADKO, but still more than adequate to do everything you need. This kind of has crack-and-ish balance, to be honest with you. Excuse me. Yeah, this has got really, really good balance. And so who would I say is the best flipper out of these two? For your average guy, it's probably going to be this guy. This is a really, really good flipper. Now, normally I would not be shilling out on the CHAB here, considering you'll find out what my preference is later, but you know, I quite like the MADKO. But I guess so far it's stacking up like the MADKO is the better flipper. And if we're going to talk about durability, again, we saw the blade on this guy, you know, has recorded issues. You know, I mean, the handles do seem also pretty tankish. This guy seems like an absolute unit, though. I mean, this, you know, this is the kind of thing you drop it and you worry about what it's dropping onto, because it just might explode. And so it's looking like it's essentially a unanimous defeat for the CHAB. But, actually, except for aesthetics, I think that the MADKO looks much cooler. I'll give the MADKO, you know, 10 out of 10 on that one. And then this guy's, you know, I guess functionality is the trainer blade isn't exactly useful for anything other than a trainer blade, or that is a bottle opener, and an alright one at that. It does open bottles well. It's just weird that the leverage point is, like, you know, obviously all the way back here. And so, when it comes to a conclusion as to which balisong should you buy, I think if you want just one flipper, and you can only have one balisong collection, this is your guide to go. But if you want something that's going to be engaging, a little more fun, I'm sorry, but it's going to have to go to the MADKO. And the reason why this is something so polarizing for me is because at the end of the day, I was surprised to find out the CHAB is a better flipper. It's even arguably a better balisong. Not as nicely put together as the MADKO. This thing has, you know, a few little touches that just give this like an air of premium, of premiership, really. But there's just something about it. This is a little bit more rugged, a bit more rough tough, a bit more, I'll get it done, no matter the cost. And there's something really admirable about the CHAB for that. But for me personally, in my personal collection, I'm going to be keeping the MADKO. I think it looks cooler. I like that it's a bottle opener. I prefer a little bit how it flips more, despite it not being as competitive as a flipper. And I prefer the sound. It's really strange for me. I don't typically come to the conclusion of it's a balisong that is objectively worse, but I prefer it. Especially because it's more expensive. So what more do you get from this that you don't get from that? It's really difficult to quantify. This is something where you'd have to, ideally, if you can, flip them both for yourself. But Yeah, this is a really difficult one. But I'm going to give it to the MADKO as the honorary winner. But the actual winner between what is the best EDC titanium balisong money can buy you, it's still the reputable ex-king of clones, the CHAB. The balance, the sound, the feel, the heft, you know, they're similar in weight-wise as well. This guy is just undefeatable, really. I mean, there is... The Valor Plus Tsunami is the only thing that comes close to this in terms of value for money with more competitive flipping. And simply just because it's lighter. And I guess doesn't nick you as much. Well, just because, you know, this bit here is... It can... That's probably the sharpest bit on the Balisong. But yeah, there you go. There's your conclusion, guys. Despite my preference for the MADKO, CHAB is the winner. So if you want to buy one, links are in the description down below. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.